Greetings, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am so glad you're here. Thanks for tuning in. Tonight, we'll be starting at page 276 of Marcus Garvey and the Vision of Africa.
Greetings. My name is the Revolutionary Matron, and my show is called The Learning Curve. I broadcast on a network called KWAZ Radio. There are other hosts on the network I'd like you to meet.
Greetings, everyone. This is Koku from the Bitter Medicine Podcast, inviting you to tune in to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio.
Peace, family. This is Oni, inviting you to listen to the Pro-Black Perspective, where black problems are addressed with black solutions.
This is D Webb with the Harsh Reality Podcast, asking you to tune in where we tackle the news of the day that affects our community, only on KWAZ Radio.
The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed here belong solely to the respondent, and they do not necessarily reflect any broadcast networks, affiliates, nor sponsors. The Learning Curve is a broadcast created for the benefit of my global community. Black is a consciousness. Content is being used for our commentary, research, criticism, education, scholarship, teaching, preaching, and news reporting. No copyright infringement is intended. I will make enunciation mistakes. I will give you my opinion about the information. And if you ever ask, I will send you my source.
Marcus Garvey and the Vision of Africa, The Rebuilding of the Movement, 1927 to 1934. This commentary is called The Political Activities of Marcus Garvey in Jamaica. It is a reprint from the Jamaica Journal, June of 1972, by Amy Jacques Garvey. The year 1929 was one of the most striking and agonizing 365 days stay in Jamaica. Subtle, silent, and systematic efforts were made to crush him and destroy his movement when he would not heed to the overtures of agents sent to plead with him for his own good to give up the fight to change the condition of the Black masses. In July of that year, a default judgment of G.O. Mark, a former officer of the parent body in New York City, was taken up by J.H. Cargill, solicitor in Jamaica. Sir Phineas Barrett Lennard, Chief Justice, gave judgment and ordered the sale of all the properties and assets of the parent body, UNIA. Despite the fact that an appeal was pending, everything was sold. During the hearing, the Chief Justice fined Garvey £25 for not producing the books of the local branch, which Garvey did not have in his possession. The local UNIA won the appeal, and the government had to refund the branch the price paid for their Liberty Hall at the auction sale, which was below market value. But Garvey got nothing for all the assets of the various auxiliary units sold by order of the Chief Justice. The Isaiah Mortar case was going through the courts of Belize, British Honduras, on to England to appeal. Mr. Mortar, a Black patriot, left his estate to the UNIA for African redemption. This, the colonial office, through the local judiciary, said was for illegal purposes. And despite the thousands of pounds spent for barristers and court fees, the parent body and Garvey never got the legacy. Garvey and the movement were stripped financially, but their spirit was never broken. So they held the Sixth International Convention in Jamaica, and delegates heralded to the world a defiance that whatever mortal men did to hamper the struggle, the spirit of Garveyism would prevail. Feeling the mighty hand of imperialism clothed in legal authority, Garvey decided to form a political party in order to change conditions. He and his colleagues named it the People's Political Party. In 1929, they issued a manifesto. In the subsequent municipal elections, they won 3 seats. They had one in the chamber in the Legislative Council. They now decided to run 12 candidates, one for each parish, for the general elections to the Legislative Council. The following are the planks of their platform, which were printed on handbills, also the black man, and also in the black man. And the platform goes as follows. If elected, I shall do everything in my power to make effective the following. Number 1, representation to the Imperial Parliament for a larger modicum of self-government. Number 2, protection of native labor. Number 3, a minimum wage for the laboring and working classes of the island. Number 4, a law to protect the working and laboring classes of the country by insurance against accident, sickness, and death occurring during employment. Number 5, a law to compel the employment of not less than 60% of native labor in all industrial, agricultural, and commercial activities engaged in this island. Number 6, the expansion and improvement of city, town, or urban areas without the encumbrance or restraint of private proprietorship. Number 7, an 8-hour working day throughout Jamaica. Number 8, a law to encourage the promotion of native industries. Number 9, land reform. Number 10, a law to impeach and imprison judges who, with disregard for the British justice and constitutional rights, dealt unfairly. Number 11, a Jamaica University and Polytechnic. Number 12, the establishment of a government high school in the capital town of each parish for the supply of free secondary education. Attached to the said high school to be a night continuation school to facilitate those desiring to study at night in order to advance their education. Number 13, a public library in the capital town of each parish. Number 14, a national opera house with an academy of music and art. Number 15, prison reform. Number 16, the compulsory improvement of urban areas from which large profits are made by trusts, corporations, combines, and companies. Number 17, the appointment of official court stenographers to take official notes of all court proceedings in the Supreme Court, resident magistrate courts, and petty sessions courts of the island. Number 18, the creation of a legal aid department to render advice and protection to such persons who may not be able to have themselves properly represented and protected in the courts of law. Number 19, a law for the imprisonment of any person who by duress or undue influence would force another person to vote in any public election against his will because of obligations or employment or otherwise. Number 20, the granting to the townships of Montego Bay and Port Antonio the corporate rights of cities. Number 21, a law to empower the government to secure a loan of £3 million or more from the imperial government or otherwise to be used by the government under the management of a department of the Director of Agriculture in developing the Crown Islands, the Crown lands of the island, agriculturally and otherwise, with the object of supplying employment for our surplus unemployed population and to find employment for stranded Jamaicans abroad, and that the government purchase such ships as are necessary from time to time to facilitate the marketing of the produce gathered from these crown lands, and at the same time conveniently offering an opportunity to other producers to ship and market their produce. Number 22, the beautifying and creating of the Kingston Racecourse into a national park similar to Hyde Park in London. Number 23, the establishment by the government of an electrical system to supply cheap electricity to such growing and prospering centers as are necessary. Number 24, a law to establish clinical centers from which trained nurses are to be sent out to visit homes in rural districts and to teach and demonstrate sanitary and better health methods in the care of home and family. Number 25, a law to empower the parochial boards to each parish to undertake, under the direction of the central government, the building of model sanitary homes for the peasantry by the system of easy payments to cover a period of from 10 to 20 years. Number 26, a law to prevent profiteering in the sale of land in urban and suburban areas to the detriment of the expansion of healthy home life for citizens of moderate means. Profiteering such as is indulged in Lower St. Andrew by heartless land sharks. Greetings, Forecast and Brother Bakari. Thanks for tuning in. As leader of the party, Garvey spoke at Crossroads Square on September 10, 1929, presented the manifesto, and elaborated on all proposed reforms. A few days later, he was arraigned in court on a second contempt charge before the same Chief Justice and two other judges. The basis of the charge, as was the 10th plank of the manifesto. He was found guilty and sentenced to 3 months imprisonment and a fine of £100. He served the prison term at the Spanish Town prison at a first-class misdemeanor. On release from prison, he only had a couple of weeks to campaign and was without funds. Here are a few points he made. Workers should be insured against sickness and accidents while employed. The earning capacity of the workers must be increased, which will benefit all classes of society. In this way, workers will be able to spend more by earning more. No encouragement is being given to the natives to foster and promote industries. The result is that Jamaica has grown up to be a country of consumers. Out of our byproducts of agriculture, we produce nothing. We import shoes, clothes, hats, etc., when most of these things could be made right here. Canning and tanning factories would be a great encouragement to the farmers in the country parishes, whose surplus fruit go to waste and the skins of the animals bring little or nothing. My opponents say I am against white and fair-skinned people. This is not so. I am against the class system here, which keeps the poor man down, and the poor are mostly Black people. It is only natural, therefore, that their interests should be nearest and dearest to my heart. Let us all work together as fellow Jamaicans and ring in the changes for a new Jamaica. When the election returns were announced, Garvey was a shocked and grieved man. However, he went through the parishes and thanked those who voted for his party. He said, "My speeches and utterances were recorded with the hope of sending me back to prison. You were told not to vote for Garvey as he would become too powerful under the party system, a man is as powerful in a legislator as his party, which derives its power from the voters, and intelligent voters cast their votes not merely because they like him, but because he is bound by the party's plans for betterment. The voters have turned back the clocks of progress for another 10 years, but party system is well established in your minds and it will come and it will go. It is bound to come and it will come. It is bound to come." In a letter dated February 1st, 1930, reproduced in the Negro World, A. Wesley Atherton commented on the campaign thus: "Rum and human depravity blocked the path of Mr. Marcus Garvey. The terrible reverse which he received at the polls was due in no sense whatever to lack of organization. With the limited means at his command, his campaign could not have been better organized. He has lost, in what was almost a rum war, a money scramble. With the bait dangling before their gaze, the red linen of filthy lucre, Negro sons of African slaves in this enlightened age voted away their birthright and suffered themselves to be indentured for another 5 years under conditions that have sucked their vitals to the very bone. They traded on the future happiness of their children and trampled their manhood into the dust. With the whip of the slave master still cracking in their ears, they followed the stream of molten gold down the hills of St. Andrew to vote against Marcus Garvey. They stabbed him fiercely in the back, and while now recovering from that brutal wound, he stands before the bar of public opinion, facing charges of his traducers. Those who can must help, and those of us who cannot must weep. But the mournful dirge of the People's Political Party, not Garveyism, will not be sung in this generation, nor in the next. It shall synchronize only with the passage of time into eternity. Both causes are immoral and must survive all human material barriers and impositions. Marcus Garvey has secured a wider niche in the Hall of Fame. Greetings, Oni. I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for tuning in. In October 1929, Garvey was elected to the Kingston and St. Andrew Corporation Council, but having to serve 3 months in prison on the second contempt charge, he was unable to take the oath and function as councilor. He applied for leave. It was denied by a majority of one, but the lawyer for the corporation ruled that it was discretionary. Garvey took his seat on release from prison. Then some of the counselors maneuvered again to unseat him, but they finally lost out. Arising out of the underhanded tactics used to keep him out of the council, an article was written in The Black Man, in which it is stated in part: "The corporation is entirely opposed to the welfare of the country. The government is also bereft of common decency, not to say dignity and common sense. It is true our faith in the local administration of affairs is sorely tried. Perhaps we should not be but our confidence in British fair play is not upheld by the manifestations we behold day by day. Garvey, T. Aikman, editor, and Coleman Beecher, circulating manager, were brought before the court for seditious libel. Although Aikman admitted writing the editorial in question, and Garvey did not see it as he was traveling in the parishes, the same Chief Justice acquitted Beecher and referred to Aikman as a tool of Garvey and sentenced him to 3 months imprisonment. Garvey, he said, was criminally responsible and sentenced him to 6 months imprisonment. Garvey and Eichmann appealed at great cost, and the appeal was allowed. So ended the third charge of contempt. Later on, a special commission was appointed to probe the affairs of the city council. On the grounds of their findings, that body was dissolved. Unable to do anything for the parishes, he was not in the legislative council, and being hampered in the corporation council in getting his resolutions through and put into practical use, Garvey in June of 1930 formed the Workers and Laborers Association to see what organized effort could do on their behalf. He led a deputation to the governor, asking him to investigate the distressing conditions of the masses of the island and to use his influence towards remedial measures. Nonchalantly, the governor replied that in his opinion, there was no unusual suffering. Garvey's next move was to draw up a petition to the king through the colonial office. He sent copies to labor members of parliament and other liberal-minded men and newspaper editors in England. The result was the appointment of the Royal Commission to investigate the political and economic conditions of the West Indies. At the end of September, he held a monster mass meeting in Kingston at Coke Chapel Steps, the outdoor forum, to tell the good people the news. Mr. J. Denniston, treasurer of the Workers and Laborers Association, presided and introduced Garvey. He complimented the people on their good behavior during the times of provocation, strain, and misery, and outlined the matters to be brought to the attention of the members of the Royal Commission. During the time he served the municipality, the following is one of the most far-reaching resolutions he put forward. Of course, he was outvoted. Be it resolved that the council, for the purpose of carrying out civic improvements, particularly involving better water supply, better lighting, installing of a proper sewage system, improvements to slum areas, building a town hall, erecting a new fire brigade station, laying out recreation grounds, and all such works of magnitude that may be necessary as improvements within the corporate area, approach government for the purpose of securing the necessary authority to float a local loan of £500,000 in order to undertake the carrying out of these improvements immediately, particularly as a means of relieving the present and continuing state of unemployment and hardships among the people. Be it further resolved that the city engineer be requested to prepare plans and estimates involving the general cost of all these improvements for the guidance of the council in laying before the government the manner in which the amount asked for will be spent. In speaking on the motion, he said that the depression was being felt in the big cities of Europe, England, and the United States of America. Their statesmen did not ignore it. In fact, they dared not. So with initiative and planning, they put into effect measures to alleviate same, the dole, relief works, feeding of school children, old age pensions, etc. The Legislative Council, instead of tackling our problems at this level, ignored them and continued their individual narrow policy of getting bridges built, a stretch of road repaired, or a water tank erected. Let us set them an example in sensible planning and make the people of Kingston and St. Andrews happy. Some of us will ask, where is the money to come from? It is right here in Jamaica. Just recently, I read in the newspapers that a man died and left £650,000. There are many planters, merchants, and businessmen who have made their money here and are wealthy, but alive or dead, they do nothing to benefit the people of their communities. They have no national spirit, but they could be asked to subscribe a loan for development, for which they would be paid interest. This act would also ease their consciences. The opposing arguments were that such socialist planning had lost the Labor Party an election. They did not intend to assume big responsibilities, as they could hardly manage what they had in hand. Put to the vote, the motion was lost. It was grievous to Garvey that legislators in both councils refused to legislate for a better Jamaica from the grassroots up, but he warned them that one day these docile people would rise up in the power of their wrath and tear down the barriers that keep them, the lower classes, down. The political and economic reforms he suggested in Jamaica set the pattern for the other Caribbean territories. He was the pioneer, reformer, and prophet. Marcus Garvey, in his own words, speech at Albert Hall. It was he gave this speech in London on June 6 of 1928. The case of the Negro for international racial adjustment. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, fellow citizens of the British Empire, I am here this evening as the President General of the Universal Negro Improvement Association, an organization of 11 million Negroes in Africa, the United States of America, South America, Central America, Canada, and the West Indies, to present to you the claim of our race upon civilization. For more than 500 years, you assumed a leadership over us, much against our will, the result of which took us into slavery, and we labored as such slaves for 250 years in the country now known as the United States of America, and for 230 years in the countries known as the West Indies, British, Spanish, and French. I can well remember when you, the English, entered upon the slave traffic, John Hawkins, whom you afterwards elevated to knighthood, in seeking a charter to empower him to take slaves from Africa, said that he wanted to take the slaves from Africa for the purpose of civilizing and Christianizing them. Christianizing and civilizing them, the Queen signed the charter. That traffic removed millions of Black men, women, and children from the west coast of Africa to your dominions and colonies in the West Indies and in America. As I have stated, for 250 years we struggled in America under the burden and rigors of slavery. We were brutalized, we were maimed, we were killed, we were ravaged in every way. Then, in America, a man sprang up by the name of Abraham Lincoln, and in 1865, he liberates the American Negro slaves. A woman by the name of Victoria the Good, the Queen of England, in 1838 emancipated the West Indian Negroes. Tonight, we have on the platform here native sons of Africa, descendants of slaves in the Western world, Negroes of America, and Negroes from the West Indies. We have come to tell you how we feel about it and what we want done in the present time to prevent a reoccurrence of what happened to us hundreds of years ago. In presenting this case, I want to do so with the best feeling towards all concerned. I came to England under instructions from those millions of people to approach you through your government, through public opinion, through your king, and through the crowded heads and the governments of Europe, especially those that have dominions at the present time in Africa. England, France, Italy, Spain, Belgium, Portugal have assumed within the last 50 years the right politically to parcel out the land of our forefathers without anybody saying a word to us. At the Versailles Conference, at the League of Nations, the representatives of those governments created certain mandates without asking us. Nearly 300 million people. One word about it. We are here in Europe to say something about it. We are here to let not only Europe, but the world know that the new Negro is not going to be railroaded into slavery, into becoming a peon, into becoming a serf. So was easily done in the centuries gone by. We are men. We have souls. We have passions. We have feelings. We have hopes. We have desires like any other race in the world. The cry is raised all over the world today of Canada for the Canadians, America for the Americans, England for the English, of France for the French, of Germany for the Germans. Do you think it is unreasonable that we, the blacks of the world, should raise the cry of Africa for the Africans? Somebody with an evil mind has placed a wrong interpretation upon our motives and upon my expressions. They have tried to make me all kinds of things. They have tried to make me a socialist, a Bolshevist, and they went and found out that I was neither. And when they found out that I was neither, they said I was a crook, and they sent me to prison as a favor, they said, to the colored people. And after they kept me in prison for 2 years and 10 months and found it was not a pleasure, but a grave displeasure, they found an excuse to commute my sentence, and then they deported me from America. I thought of coming from America at the request of my organization to speak to English people about whom I read so much about and about whom I heard so much about for their liberal attitude toward all men. I thought I would have a fair hearing in England to present a clear case, not only for the organization I represent, but for the Negroes of the world and to clear my character. The first thing they said about me when I arrived here was that I was a desperate crook, and the person who wrote that about me never saw me, never knew nothing, no challenges and no dealings with me. But he and others were willing to state a case against me so as to prejudice the success of this meeting without investigating. The forecast says the New Negro movement was one of his favorite movements. And he said, I don't know why they used to think Europeans would care to help. The ones in America came from Europe. That's the home of that culture. Absolutely. Do you know what I went to prison for? They said that some unknown employee of mine, because I was president of the Black Star Line, a steamship corporation, and an auxiliary of that organization that I represent now, posted a letter to somebody. In the evidence, an envelope was presented to the witness, which he identified as addressed to him. But he could not identify any letter contained in the envelope, and the prosecuting attorney presented it in evidence as a fair assumption that the envelope bore mailed matter from the Black Star Line. And because of that, an empty envelope, I was sent to prison in America for 5 years. And you call me a criminal for that. And the newspapers in England have published only that evil side of it without seeing the good that the organization which I represent has done in its 14 years of existence. What have we done in 14 years? In 14 years, we have organized 11 million Black men. We have made an effort to prove to you who have helped us, some of you with very good intentions, to help ourselves, that we were capable of doing something for ourselves. We started a steamship line called the Black Star Line, the object of which was to offer an opportunity to the Negroes in the Western world who were desirous of going back to Africa as missionaries and as settlers to help develop their country. Preparing the way for that, we started a commercial relationship with the nearby Negroes of the West Indies and America. A big fruit company in America that has exploited Negroes of the West Indies for 50 years and piled up a reserve of nearly $1 billion. Started with one little three-masted schooner and today has a steamship line of 150 ships. When they saw that we were in earnest and we were making a serious effort to help the Negro from a commercial point of view, they influenced the politicians and influenced servants of the American government, bribed our employees so as to make it impossible for this little venture of ours to succeed. Greetings, Sister Ra. How are you tonight? I'm so glad you're here. After they had done everything in conjunction with others who were desirous of preventing us from entering into any serious business proposition, after they had destroyed the possibility of success, they found some person to complain, and after some pretense, they indicted me for the failure of the company. They found somebody who would vouchsafe to say he had brought stock in the Black Star Line on my urge, on my request. After indicting me, they seized the books of our corporation with 35,000 names and sent out a questionnaire to the 35,000 stockholders of the corporation, asking them if they were satisfied with the investments they had undertaken in the undertakings of Marcus Garvey. Did Marcus Garvey influence them to buy stock? And so on. There were over 100 other questions, and out of 35,000, they got 18 people to say that they were dissatisfied. Those 18 people were all employees of the American or the United States government. Those are the people they used to convict me in America. In addition to the fact that for 6 years, 25% of our employees were Secret Service agents of the United States government, it is peculiar also for you to realize that the Consul General to me and my organization, on whose advice I acted, I, not being an American citizen, but a British subject, and not knowing, was paid, like myself, from the common funds of the organization. An American citizen who was responsible for the legal phase of our business, the Consul General, while in our employ, was also in the employ of the government. When I was indicted, they called him out from serving as a consul general, and after convicting me, they made him an assistant attorney general to the United States. If anybody should have indicted the consul general of the organization who gave the advice to the organization, they should have been indicted. Those are the morals of politics in America. And I am surprised that the English press should influence the English public to condemn me without a hearing, trying to state that I am a criminal and an ex-convict under those circumstances. Now, I am not here to present my story, but I am forced to make a statement so as to clear your minds, and I regard you as good friends who have come here in spite of all the vicious and wicked things that have been said. You have come here, you have come to hear what I have to say on behalf of my race and on behalf of my organization. Though secret propaganda has been engineered to prevent the success of this meeting simply because those who were chiefly instrumental in my imprisonment in America and those who profit most by interrupting the success of this organization desired to do that. It is such a grave question that I will endeavor to present it briefly in parts. But erase from your minds that I am here as an ordinary criminal trying to influence you to do something that is not right. I am here because I am in earnest, because of my love not only for my own race, but because of my love for humanity. Since I arrived in London, the many interviewers of your race who came to see me only wanted to know if we intended to use force in getting possession of Africa. And they wanted to know what part of Africa and all the rest of it. We are not evil-minded. As the chairman said, we believe in righteousness. We have a righteous cause, and we are going to present it from that angle. But you Britishers, you Englishmen, have suffered as much as we have suffered, because you, although far removed from the period today, were as much slaves hundreds of years ago as we were slaves 60, 70, or 80 years ago in the Western world. You grew out of slavery, the slavery imposed upon you by the Romans. You have developed wonderfully to the point where you are in a position today to treat with others. We want to place you mentally back into the position you were in 55 BC, when you were slaves to the Romans. Surely you do not feel well about it. It is because of that you have become such a sturdy race, determined that you shall never be slaves again, that Britain shall ever rule the waves, and that the Britons never, never shall be slaves. As you feel about it, so do we feel about it. You are human beings, we are human beings. We are not asking for anything that is unfair and unreasonable. We are only asking for the right to repossess ourselves of this country, of our country. Would you like anybody to go into your country and dispossess you of it? Surely not. You love the old homeland too well, too much for that. So tonight we come to you, Englishmen and English women, you who form public opinion, before going to the government, because we interpret government as only the executive for the people. Before we go to the government, we go to the people to test the sentiments of the people so that you can, by that sentiment, direct the attitude of those who represent you. We do not contemplate rushing on the government without proper preparation for the government to excuse itself by saying, well, we are not instructed to do this and we cannot assume the responsibility of doing this. That is why we have come to you in your public forum to get your opinion about the matter. We want to find out if you Englishmen, if you English women who make up the bone and sinew of your nation intend that Africa must be exploited, must be taken away from its natives people, that Black men from Africa must be kicked about all over the world without a home, without a vine and a fig tree of their own. If you say you empower your government to carry that out, then we will know exactly the attitude of the English people and how to deal with the matter. But we do not believe that the hearts of Englishmen and English women are so depraved, so unreasonable, so unfair, so unjust as to instruct their government to go into the Black man's country and dispossess him of every bit of his native rights in his own home. And if he goes abroad, will tell him, as a lady told me in Hyde Park last Sunday, go back to your country, when I asked the question of a speaker speaking on the anti-socialist platform. Now, this is something about which you ought to be serious. If you want me to go home, should you not make it so that home is really ready that home is really home to me and not one in which other lands where I am not wanted? The joke of deporting a Negro from America. Have you looked upon it from the humorous point of view? It was all a joke to me. I never took myself I never took myself to the Western world. They, of their own free will, went 300 years ago to my native land where I was happy and had peace, at peace with myself and with my God, and took me into the bosom of their own country. And then, after 300 years, deported me. Now, is that not a joke? They claim that I am an undesirable alien. Just imagine, after 300 years, a Negro becoming undesirable in America. It is such a huge joke that we have not finished laughing at it yet. But those are the little things that weaken you, that weaken white civilization in the eyes of the thinking darker peoples of the world. Those are the little incidents that cause us to think that you are not serious. We are not here to do anything that is unreasonable. We are here to present a just claim. You who know our relationship, you who know your relationship with the Negro, know that we have done everything possible to assist and help you. The history of the centuries tells it. In nearly all your wars, we assumed a common responsibility with you so as to preserve the empire. Why we ourselves are responsible for adding so much domain to your empire. Nearly all your possessions in Africa were made possible by the blood of our men under your direction. The West India Regiment, which you have just disbanded, the West India Regiment that you have just disbanded, tell a tell a tale in history. You used the British West India Regiment to add nearly all West Africa to your dominions. You used the West Indian and African Negro soldiers in the last war to take over the territories that you have taken over from Germany. Not only have we fought to add new territory to the British Empire, but we have fought to save the American Union. We have fought to make American independence possible. The first man who shed blood in America for the independence of the American colonies was a black man on Boston Common by the name of Crispus Attucks. In the Civil War, the black soldiers saved the day many a time. The great Theodore Roosevelt that you have heard of, Theodore Roosevelt the Blessed, was saved to serve his country and humanity, not by his own Rough Riders, but by black men. Do you know that we have gladly borne your burdens for hundreds of years? The cotton mills of Lancashire, the great shipping port of Liverpool. Tell the tale of what we have done as black men for the British Empire. The cotton that you consume and use in keeping your mills going has for centuries come from the southern states of the United States. It is the product of Negro labor. Upon that cotton, your industry has prospered and you have been able to build the great British Empire of today. Have you no gratitude for a people who have helped with all that God gives them to give in fellowship and in good grace to others? We are not before you tonight asking you to pay for 300 years of labor in slavery. No, we are only asking you now for common justice. With the terrible system of dishonor that existed in Europe, you were forced into a great war, the War of 1914 to 1918. A war that never concerned me, a war that never concerned any black man in the world, because for the last 3,000 years, the black man has been a man of peace. It was your war, but when it was too much for you, you called for help, and 2 million of us black men went from Senegal, from the Sudan, from West Africa, from East Africa, from the West Indies, from the United States of America, and tonight the blood of our boys has soaked the soil and their bones are buried in Flanders where the poppies grow. Not for any political reason on behalf of the Negro, but in an answer to the call to save the world for democracy and to protect the rights of weaker peoples. That was the urge that called us into war. 2 millions of us answered, and hundreds of thousands of us paid the price. At Versailles, when the peace treaty was to be signed, you called everybody in and you distributed the spoils of war to everybody. You gave the Jew Palestine. You gave the Egyptians a larger modicum of self-government. You gave the Irish home rule government and dominion status. You gave the Poles a new government of their own. But what did you give to the Negro? What did you do to the Negro? You threw his dead body on the streets of Cardiff, smashed the coffin, and kicked the corpse about and made a football of it after he came back from the war. In America, 200,000 boys had hardly taken off their uniforms when, on parading in the streets, one of them was lynched in the very uniform of the United States. Is that a just reward for service so generously given? Yet, we are not sore about it. We are not vexed about it. We only want you people to know the truth, because we do not believe that the hearts of all Englishmen are bad. We do not believe that the hearts of all the American people are bad. When I spoke of the lack of morality in politics in America, I did not mean among the people, but I mean without any reserve among the politicians now in power. Now, I consider myself honored to have been indicted and to have been sent to prison at the time of the administration of such a rogue and vagabond as the Attorney General of the United States of America, Harry Dougherty. The very man who engineered my indictment, plotted my indictment with others, was such a rascal that they had to kick him out of office and indict him for fraud in connection with $7 million alien enemy funds, and only whose plea to the jury was that he had an old mother. But because he belonged to the party in power, they convicted the other fellow who acted under his urge and let him go. As I have said, I feel honored to have been indicted under the administration of such a rogue. When I was in the federal prison in America, I was associated with whom? I was associated not with the ordinary criminal of the streets. I was an associate of and a fellow convict in company with men like ex-Governor McCrae of the state of Indiana and of senators and congressmen of the United States. So you will come, so you will understand that being imprisoned in the United States is not like being imprisoned in England. Therefore, you should not condemn me without trying me on the principles of English justice. I do not believe there is any law on your statute books that would convict a man because of some unknown agent of his posted an empty envelope. Yet you say I am a criminal because I was convicted on such a flimsy charge in the United States of America. But men, let me show you some of the things that are being done against us. My imprisonment in America was only the means to end in the was only the means to an end in the commercial and industrial schemes of men who are creating so much trouble in the world today. Take the great rubber shortage. There was a great rubber shortage from 1922 up till 1925 on the part of the Americans. You English had cornered the rubber market. You had all the rubber plantations under your control in the Malay Peninsula. The Americans had no rubber service. Mr. Hoover acted as foster father of all American rubber interests. He set out to get control of rubber lands in any part of the world where he possibly could get control of them. Just about that time, my organization, in carrying out its serious program of rebuilding Africa through the help and influence of the educated Negroes of the West going home, had completed an agreement with the Liberian government for the government to place at our disposal 4 sections of the little country so that we could start our experiment in helping to build Liberia and make her a worthy, worthwhile Negro state in West Africa. We sent 4 delegations out to Liberia who were received by the president of Liberia and by the Liberian government. Our agreement was entered into. They advised us At what time we should start sending our colonists to Liberia. Acting on their instructions and on their urging, we spent fully $500,000 in buying machinery and materials and in securing one of the best steamships afloat, known as the SS General Goethals, a German liner taken during the war. She was a well-constructed boat of 5,500 tons. We bought her from the Panama Railroad Company and paid nearly $260,000 for her and in purchasing equipment. After we had spent nearly $500,000, after we had entered into agreements with expert civil engineers and mechanical engineers and mining engineers, and had taken from a company in America one of their best expert civil engineers to be the director general of our work in Liberia. After we had everything ready, Firestone's agent found out that it was possible to grow rubber in Liberia. He therefore influenced the president of Liberia, King Charles, the man who had entered into a sacred agreement with us, to abrogate the contract between his government and my organization and to place at his, Firestone's, disposal the land that was to be given to our organization. Without any advice, without any instructions, when our advance agents landed in Liberia, instead of receiving them as they promised they would, the government deported them. When the ships of the Bull Line arrived with our material aboard, nearly $200,000 worth of materials, they landed the materials and kept them and have kept them up to now. They also gave Firestone 1 million acres of land, which they have placed at our disposal for colonization purposes. Firestone was backed by Mr. Hoover, the Secretary of Commerce in America. Therefore, you will understand that it was convenient at the time in 1924 to rush me to prison because just at that time I was able to make not only trouble for King Charles but for Firestone for double crossing us in Liberia. I had enough influence to have unseated King Charles as president in the next election. Firestone and the American government knew that. Mr. Hoover knew that I had enough influence in Liberia to prevent King Charles being returned for a third time as president of the country, and so as to weaken my influence and make it impossible for me to prevent the king from being returned so that he and his Senate could ratify the agreement, they thereupon railroaded me for 5 years and kept me there for 6 months after Charles King was reelected. That is the kind of thing they do. The President of the United States of America said to the ex-consul general of my organization, "I know Garvey has not done anything wrong, but he was a bad businessman." That president had it in his power not only to commute my sentence the very day I was sentenced, but to pardon me. Yet he never did anything until 2 years afterwards when it was convenient from a political point of view and from a commercial point of view to let me go. And then they deported me without giving me a chance of going back to my office in New York, where I represented the interest of 4 million American citizens, involving millions of dollars. They called me a rogue and a vagabond and did not give me a chance to go back to New York and straighten out the affairs of these people, although I asked to be allowed to do so, and the Secretary of Labor said no. They commuted my sentence on November the 24th. The executive authority said that my commutation release should be immediate, but they kept me until nearly the first day of the following month without notifying me that I was commuted. Although I should have gone away from prison at that time, the reason was that they were devising schemes during those few days as to how they could get me out of the country without my returning to New York. Therefore, I never knew the condition of my commutation until I was on the ship. So, you will realize that being imprisoned in the United States of America is not like being imprisoned in England, where you have morality and principle and justice and law before you can take away the name of a man and deprive him of his character. Consequently, I appeal to you, Englishmen and Englishwomen, who are here tonight, not to come to any hasty conclusion touching my character, because I feel it coming before you that, before my God, I can match my character against the character of any man in the world. I dare any man in all the world to say that I have ever defrauded him of one penny. Any man in the world. So that I trust you will not make it a point of prejudice against me and against my organization I represent that I was sent to prison because it was a minor and an insignificant matter in concerning the grave question that we have before us for settlement. As I have said, I am here as the representative of 11 million people. They naturally will look towards any treatment meted out to me as a similar treatment meted out to them. I trust you will not make the mistake of thinking that the Negro is so simple at this time as to accept any insult without returning it, so that any rebuff you give as touching the representation I make on behalf of the people will not be an insult to Marcus Garvey, but an insult to the 280 million Negroes whom I represent through the Universal Negro Improvement Association. We look upon your representatives as the ambassadors of your race. We want to treat them as honorable men. All this vile propaganda that you have read within the last week is purely a misrepresentation of the statements I have made as touching the aims and object of this organization. I gave clean and intelligent and above board statements to the press. They have not published those statements, but they have published things to make me a buffoon, to make me look ridiculous before you, and to defeat the object of this meeting here tonight. I want you, therefore, to know that the Negro is no longer asleep. The intelligent representatives of the race are thinking, but we are intelligent enough to know that you should not be judged and held accountable for the conduct of men who do not truly and thoroughly represent you. We want to be the friends of the English people. We want to be the friends of the white races the world over, because neither the black race, nor the white race, nor the brown race, nor the yellow race can achieve anything in the world lastingly except through peaceful methods. We want peace. The Negro has always been on the side of peace. We are not a vile people. You know our history throughout the last 3,000 years. We have committed no outrages upon humanity. We have committed no outrages upon civilization. We have at our disposal today no great armaments. We have no battleships. We have no navies. We have no standing armies. Therefore, you must conclude that we are a people who love peace. Our attitude and our acts prove conclusively that we are not inclined to disturb the peace of the world. All we want is justice. And we are appealing to the hearts of you Englishmen at home and abroad to listen to the plea of bleeding Africa. I have recounted to you the history of slavery. I have recounted to you our present economic and social difficulties. In your respective countries, you do not want us. We cannot go to Australia and get a living. We cannot go to Canada and get a living. We cannot come to England and get a living. You will not employ us. Nearly 90% of the blacks in England are unemployed because you are prejudiced against employing us. That is not fair. In our countries, we treat you with consideration. In the colonies where you send out your men, both as e-migrants and as colonial administrators, we treat them with the greatest courtesy. I have but to recall the treatment of Negroes in Africa towards Stanley and towards Livingstone to show our disposition towards strangers. You sent consumptive Livingstone to us. He lived in our midst. We fed him. When he was sick, we gave him medicine. When he died and we could do nothing more for him, we took his dead body upon our shoulders and walked hundreds of miles through the forest of Africa and brought his remains to you, to the sea, whence you could remove them at your pleasure. The consumptive Cecil Rhodes went to Africa. We treated him with kindness and consideration. The result, they have made Rhodesia so that a black man cannot walk on the sidewalks of that country. That is not a fair return for all that we have done. We have laid our hearts and our souls bare to you. We have always been willing to suffer and to help you in all circumstances, in season and out of season. And therefore, we are only asking you now for a reasonable consideration of our case. We are 280 millions of homeless people with no country and no flag. In America, they make a joke of it that every nation has a flag but the coon. You will find it in mimicry and in song. Tonight, I am appealing to the hearts of you Anglo-Saxons or you Anglo-Americans. Listen to the plaintive cry of the black man who has been abused for nearly 300 years in the Western world. I understand that a great scare is laid around me as a deterrent to holding this meeting here tonight. I want to say to you that up to now, you do not understand the Negro. You cannot scare the Negro anymore. The Negro is a man. We represent the new Negro. His back is not yet to the wall. We do not want his back to the wall because that would be a peculiar position and a desperate position. We do not want him there. It is because of that we are asking you for a fair compromise. Now, you have sent your agents to me asking what part of Africa we want. It is for you to decide. It is for the British government to decide. It is for the French government to decide. It is for the governments of Belgium, also and of Portugal and of Spain, in a conference with us to decide what part of Africa they will place at the disposal of the natives so that they can live in peace and in their own native land. The Belgians have control of the Belgian Congo, which they cannot use. They have not the resources to develop nor the intelligence. The French have more territory than they can develop. The Italians have more territory than they can develop. You English also have more territory than you can develop. There are certain parts of Africa in which you cannot live at all. Now it is for you to come together and give us a United States of Black Africa. If you want South Africa, you can keep South Africa. If you want East Africa, we have reasonable enough even to say, have it. But we are going to have our part in Africa, whether you will it or not. We are going to have it because we are not going to be a race without a country. God never intended it, and we are not going to abuse God's confidence in us as men. We are men, human beings, capable of the same acts as any other race, possessing, under fair circumstance, the same intelligence as any other race. You do not know Africa. Africa has been sleeping for centuries, not dead, only sleeping. You have all read the story of Rip Van Winkle, who got up and walked around. Today, Africa is walking around, not only on its feet, but on its brains. You can enslave, as you did for 300 years, the bodies of men. You can shackle the hands of men. You can shackle the feet of men. You can imprison the bodies of men, but you cannot shackle or imprison the minds of men. No race has the last word on culture and on civilization. You do not know what the Black man is capable of. You do not know what he is thinking. You are thinking in terms of battleships and dreadnoughts and of submarines and airplanes. Do you know what you are thinking about? That is our private business. Give us credit for being able to use our minds, and with people becoming conscious of themselves, determined to use their minds. You do not know to what extent they can go. Liberate the minds of men, and ultimately you will liberate the bodies of men. And I am here tonight as a representative of the new Negro in finance, the new Negro in art, the new Negro in literature, the new Negro in music, the new Negro in economics, the new Negro in science. Gentlemen, do not you know that one of the ablest scientists of the world today is a Black man in the Tuskegee Institute of Alabama in the United States? Do you know that what a scientist can do for the world? You had a little fellow over here the other day, I believe his name was Matthews, who had an idea that he had discovered the death ray, and everybody's eyes were set on him. France wanted the secret. England wanted the secret. America wanted the secret. But when they got a hold of them, they found out he had not discovered anything yet. But the new Negro is also thinking in terms of perpetual motion. The new Negro is also thinking in terms of the hidden mysteries of the world. And you do not know what the oppressed and suppressed Negro, by virtue of his condition and circumstance, may give to the world as a surprise. Do you know that when men are forced to do things, they do them with a greater effect than when they are not forced to do them? Are you going to force us into a corner where we have to think and think evil? I trust you will not do that. For God's sake, do not force 280 million Black men to think evil, because probably a unit of that great number may think so dangerously as to be a menace to the world. By the time it gets up to him, he will have gone away with the world. Do not force us to think that way. Give us a chance to live it in ease as you are living, so that we may have a chance to bring out those latent hidden powers which made a Newton, gave us a Darwin and a Huxley. We are capable of giving such men to the world if we are forced into a corner to think. But as I have said before, we are a peace loving people. We love humanity. We love our race, not for social fellowship, but in the common brotherhood that God intended we should live. We love the white race because we believe the white race has the right to peace and happiness and all those things conducive to a happy life. We love the yellow man has such claims. We believe the yellow man has such claims, and we are not going to deny ourselves the privilege. I thank you for coming out here tonight, and I compliment you upon the independence of spirit which has forced you to come to this meeting, because you could have adopted the attitude of other Englishmen who are not here tonight under the persuasion of the propaganda to destroy me, holding me up in the way that you have read of. The fact that you have come here shows that you are in search of information. I would not for 1 minute accuse all Englishmen of dishonor. I would not for 1 minute accuse all the white American people of dishonor. I have good friends in America, and I think I recognize one of them in the audience here, a man who has stuck by me all through because he believed that we are right. He represents one wing of his race, the purity side of his race, and he has been struggling for that, and we have upheld that. We honor him and his organization for that. We want to see a pure white race, and we are going to work so that we are going to have a pure black race. Circumstances sometimes create conditions over which we have no control. Men who are thrown into foreign places where their own people do not domicile naturally do not do things because they are right, but because they are convenient. Those are the sideshows and incidents we will not discuss. But the bigger issue reveals the fact that that we respect the white race remaining as it is. And we also demand that you allow the black race to remain as it is. In the colonies, you have treated us unfairly. You went to Africa and you have given us there a mongrel population. In America, you have given us a mongrel population, nearly 4 million people. And so we are aggrieved socially. But we are not going to press this grievance. We are only going to ask that you give us a fair chance, a fair opportunity to express ourselves in terms of reason. So the forecast, and that is the end of his speech at Albert Hall. The forecast had a few comments that I missed. I'm so grateful to Sister Ra and the elders. The forecast says, good luck appealing to European morality. One day maybe we will learn they're no different no matter where they're from or what their tribes are. What about the Maroon Wars they responsible for, even though he probably didn't know it? Brother Bakari says our back is against the wall right now. Bawanaha Guziki says, obviously British answer to Garvey's request was hell no, so I guess we gotta think evil. I guess we do have to think evil. No, Sister Rod, this is not the book that Colin Grant did on Marcus Garvey. This was Marcus Garvey's speech at Albert Hall. We're still reading Marcus Garvey and the Vision of Africa. We're in the section Rebuilding the Movement 1927 to 1934. And I believe you came in on the latter part of his speech at Albert Hall. which John Henrik Clarke said was one of Garvey's best speeches at Royal Albert Hall. John Henrik Clarke said this was one of his best speeches, and these were his own words. I feel like Garvey was trying to prove a point. He did have his reputation to defend and present to these people. I think that um, I think that during this time, he had been to prison. He was being called a charlatan. There was a lot going on at this time, and he expected a lot more people to show up than actually did show up. But the ones that actually showed up, he believed that he could convince them to support the African cause, Africa for the Africans cause, because every other people had a cry for nationhood. France for the French, England for the English, and America for the white Americans. Every other people had this cry of nationhood, and they had just answered the cry of nationhood from the Jewish people. So he felt like this was the perfect time to make an appeal by presenting the evidence that African people had done nothing malicious towards white people, and that we just wanted to live in peace, and that if we were given an opportunity to have our own landmass, we would all go there and we would develop our landmass in and of ourselves. Is really thinking evil when you're thinking of preparing for war, trying to save your people? What is evil, is what Brother Bakari says. Well, preparing for war is not so much thinking evil, but preparing for war is what he's talking about. I think that Marcus Garvey was living at a time where things like the atomic bomb were being developed, right? And the death ray that he speaks about in his speech. And he was saying that they didn't necessarily want African people to develop that type of technology, right? They didn't want African people to have that type of technology or have those types of aims when it came to developing weapons of war. I think that from Garvey's perspective, developing weapons of war might be considered evil in the eyes of the white people that he was talking to. But I don't think that preparing for war and preserving your people and doing the best you can to create an economic base and change their mindset is really evil. We have to get to the point where we are defining simple terms like good and evil for ourselves. We have to define words for ourselves. Every other people group does it. We simply accept European constructs for words. And there was a time where I was using European constructs to deconstruct words to get more meaning out of those words so that we had an opportunity to really understand what the heck they're talking about when they say different things. But no, I don't think that it's evil to prepare your people for war. Is it necessary if you don't want to get kidnapped and abandoned? It is necessary if you don't want to get kidnapped and enslaved. It is necessary if you don't want to get kidnapped and enslaved. Forecast. Um, and you have to If you don't, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. I believe that you should teach them and start training them young how to defend themselves, how to handle weapons, how to ensure that they are not put in a position where they are taken hostage or enslaved or kidnapped or raped or anything or harmed in any way. Because unfortunately, we're living in a world we're living in a world, unfortunately, where people have no compunction, they have no problem with doing these things to children. And if we don't prepare our children, then we're setting them up for failure. So, did anyone else have anything else that they wanted to say in regards to what we read tonight? We know that Garvey was a purist, that he believed in a pure white race and that he believed in a pure black race, but he married a West Indian woman. I think that we have to accept the idea that Garvey was talking to an audience of people that would have had an interest in preserving the whiteness and purity of their race because they believed in white power, and that he didn't want to come off too strong, but that Garvey believed in black power. Forecast want to know, yeah, what's up with the black folks back then trying to go to Europe for help? They're, first of all, they were at the time one of the most powerful countries in the world, and they were anti slavery first. They felt like they had a better chance. They felt like they had a better chance with the white Europeans in Britain and in Europe than they had with the white racists in America. He believed that, and he had had better success with white people in Jamaica early on versus success with black Jamaicans and the black white people in Jamaica. So he believed that he would have better success. And oftentimes they were more sympathetic, usually for economic reasons, because they wanted to open up markets and do different things, but they wanted to have more success. Greetings, Forecast. How are you tonight?
I'm good. How you doing, Matron?
I'm good.
Yeah. No, I was listening to your answer. You keep going.
They just, because they believed that the European in England had a more sympathetic heart, because that's where a lot of abolitionist movements started, usually for economic reasons, but they believed that those Europeans had more moral turpitude. They were more morally correct than the Europeans in America, not realizing that we just dealing with their scumbucket cousins.
All right. I'm like, yeah, that's where Europeans come from. That's where the people in America came from, is over there. And because like Ida Wells did the same thing. Like a whole bunch of people used to go on these European speaking tours, and like even Marcus Garvey himself said, before I even got there, they judged me. I mean, like, I think we still do kind of do that today, while we look for like some white group that's gonna be cool or something. But like, yeah, he comes from like Jamaica, and they had like the wars back then. You know what I'm saying? Like they had the Tacky's Rebellion and all of that. Like Britain was the one that enslaved Jamaica. You know what I'm saying? So like that's why I didn't really understand, why they used to always try to go to Europe. Like that just didn't make any sense to me. When just like it's just like going to like the white feminists like they used to.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you got to remember we also have more information. I don't know how much it, because a country is not going to tell you the sins they're committing or that they have committed against you. So there's the myth that, you're getting this good European education facilitated by the missionaries that have come in, and they're not telling you all the different things that are going wrong. As he's talking about Cecil Rhodes and the fact that in Rhodesia, Black people couldn't walk on the streets of Rhodesia. We know about the Congo and what Leopold was doing over there in the Congo. You know what I mean? There's a lot that goes into the information that's available. I think that Garvey knew his history, but Garvey may not have known.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we definitely have way more access to information than they did back then, But like I said, like before he even got there, they was like, "Oh no, you're a criminal, you're this, you're that." You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
And I think like black people's natural response is like to explain and to appeal to Europeans' morality, and even like like we understand now from what they have done, but like a lot of us don't get it, that we still try to explain to their morality. You know what I'm saying? And like especially with Marcus Garvey. I'm not sure like what years is this? It's like 19.
1929.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Because well, I guess yeah, he would separate them from Americans. So I guess yeah, you're right though.
And then we have to get to the point where we understand they don't have any morality. Not when it comes, not when it comes to us. You know what I mean? Their morality when it comes to us is don't sleep with our women, don't take our jobs. Because and it's tripped out because they know that their women want their men or women want us as sexual partners because they fetishize us, and they know that if given the same opportunity in an economic field, we are the better worker, you know? So there's this thought that they may have some morality, but they really don't. Their religion is whiteness, and our religion needs to be blackness.
Yeah, facts. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And that's why I just like because I know Ida was the first one to be like, "Yo, I'm a race woman," and he would probably be like, "I'm a race man." But um, I think that it has a little bit to do with like our religion is not blackness. Our religion is like whatever somebody else did. Like it would be Christianity or it might be whiteness for us too. I don't know, but I'm not saying that with Marcus Garvey. But like what Oni said, he's like he would speak different in front of whites than blacks because he got to appeal to their morality to their faces. But one thing I just been saying is like it doesn't matter how you speak, you know what I'm saying? Their morality is European, it's just their culture. But we know more information, hindsight is 2020. I just find it surprising, that's all.
Yeah, and especially with the rhetoric that we are taught about Marcus Garvey and him being a race man and some of the things he actually said in America. But I think Garvey was a good politician. I think that he had a heart for Black people, and I think he was ultimately a good politician, and he tried to politic. He tried to storytell. He tried to tell the people he was talking to a story that they wanted to hear.
Right. Yeah, that's true. I understand, and I get it. Hopefully we just learn our lesson because like I said, we still do that today. So but yeah, that's all I really wanted to say. I didn't want to take up too much of your time. I appreciate you letting me on and stuff.
Oh, I appreciate you coming up. And I think that we have to put these people in their proper context. There's a lot that we don't know. There's a lot that I'm learning as we read through this, and there's a lot to think about and to consider, because once you know that Garvey decided to give up the fight for his ability to stay in the United States of America, once he found out what the deportation papers actually said, what the commutation papers actually said, that it was not contingent upon his actual deportation, then you begin to understand that maybe he felt like he could fight for America and for Africans better from Jamaica, or better from a home base, um, instead of fighting with the whole arm of the United States government. When you realize all of these people in his organization were agents of the American government, you begin to understand that it's just like they set him up for failure from the very beginning.
Right. Oh yeah, that's I forgot to because this was the other day too. I remember Onia put in there that he's talking about a lot of haters, and then I know a half of the book has been like people hating on him, but like you said, he also they also show homage to him, or show respect to him in some forms. It is kind of curious why he used his haters and why so many people hated him. It could have been jealousy. I don't know. I know some people was like, I don't like with the rumors. They like, I don't know what's true or not, but just interesting that he has so many haters. But that's it.
Yeah, great men always do have a lot of haters, and I think that they were jealous of the fact that he could galvanize, he could get support. He was raising millions of dollars at a time where the dollar actually had significant value, you know, and he was able to talk millions of dollars out of the pockets of poor people. And that for me is another indicator that we've never been poor. Our money is just poorly managed.
Yeah, that's a fact right there. That's definitely a fact. But yeah, I appreciate it, Matron. This was a great reading. Thanks for letting me on and answering my questions. I know Bakari and them ain't going. They gonna get mad if I say something too bad about. I'm joking, by the way. I ain't gonna say. But yeah, thank you for letting me come on here. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks for coming up, Forecast. I appreciate you. I appreciate you and all that you always have to say and all that you offer to the stream. Um, but yeah, so Garvey made his appeal to them white folks, and he felt like he had some ability to galvanize them to support his mission and his desire for an African state, a Black African state. And as Bwana Haguziki so poignantly pointed out, they said, hell no. And we have to respect that. And so now, knowing what he has asked for in the past and understanding what has been tried in the past, we have to move forward with a new vision. Well, with the same vision, but with new techniques and methods. Um, Rugged individualism is killing us, but we have to get to the point where we know that we can have a small group of people that we select, and our small selected group is the group that is there to succeed, and we support them, each and every one of them, in their endeavors. You know, mass movements don't work because it invites government infiltration. Every mass movement was infiltrated by the government. So mass movements don't work, but small groups moving with a common goal or interrelated cells do work, and that always works. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in to Monday, March 18th. I'll be back, and we'll be reading Negro Progress Postulates Negro Government, which is an excerpt from The Black Man written in April of 1929. I appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in. I value your support. I want to say thank you to Brother Bakari, Bawana Haguziki, Sister Raw, and the elders that listen with her, the forecast, the Pro-Black Perspective, Anthony McPhail, Koku, and everyone else that listened tonight. I want to thank you for your support. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I'll see you on Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Peace, guys.